and jokes. So I wanted to go a little bit more into that analogy of these, and how this feeds into, God willing, as we'll start the maamer. When you're in a situation which you know the meaning of it and you know what it's for, so it's like a parable. It's not like you're seeing Hashem as we will, Mashiach will come, as you see the godly energy in the world, but you know what the purpose is. You know what it's about. You know what the purpose of the situation is. You know where it's going. When it's clear where things are going, I would call that a parable. It's not seeing. It's like you see you know the divine providence is a thing. You know it's real, and so you're looking at your life and think, oh, this the dots connect. In that itself, there could be many different levels. There is knowing the dots connect, and then there is like being very conscious and feel Hashem's presence in a very vivid way. Like the chassidus says that Adam and Chava in Gan Eden, they were like, their physical reality was like a parable for godliness. It wasn't just like they knew something, they felt and they saw. It was a whole different, it's a different kind of life we could even imagine. I'm thinking about one of my children, when I taught him about to give tzedakah, he asked me if he's supposed to kiss the money, because what's money? Money is the thing you do a mitzvah with. So he wanted to know, should I kiss the dollar? Should I kiss the dime? It's a mitzvah. What is it? So for him, the spiritual purpose of the dime is this is a shabbatshalom mitzvah. This is something you do a mitzvah with.
Do you kiss the esrog?
What? The esrog?
You kiss the esrog?
Esrog?
Yeah. Do you? I'm asking.
I don't know. I know that the Alter Rebbe was once asked about, he had a chassid whose father was a chassid, and he asked the Alter Rebbe if he should try to inspire his father to become a chassid. So the Alter Rebbe said, does he do mitzvahs with joy? So he said that every year when he puts the sukkah, he stands on the ladder and he kisses the schach. The Alter Rebbe said, if so, you don't have to worry about him. He'll get there.
Wow.
Anyway, then there's a riddle. A riddle means that it's not something which is obvious, but there's something in the facts in front of you that you need to think about and figure out because it's there, it's present. And a riddle is about the question. A riddle is about what the circumstances are and figuring out what those circumstances are for. But when you get a joke, when someone tells you a joke, I find that when someone's telling you a joke, what's going on really is not about the content of the joke. It's more about the person saying the joke. Meaning, it's not I mean a joke, a question joke. Someone's asking you a question, and the answer is that it's a joke. I'll never forget. I was in 6th grade, maybe a little younger. I remember. I was almost at least 6th grade. Anyways, Mrs. Albrecht, she asked us if a half a chicken lays a half an egg in a half a day, how much does a pound of butter weigh? And we had just returned from the science museum, and we were all, we knew we were all scientists, and they just explained to us we're all scientists. And we're looking at it like, that can't be true. And she's our English teacher. Why is she talking to us about the weight of it? Something, and so we realized this was a joke. And besides the fact that there's no such thing as a half a chicken, but there was something else. Like so we realized it was a joke. This is not a question. And when we realized, it wasn't a question. Half a pound of butter always weighs a pound. It's not that there was a question and the answer is that a pound of butter weighs a pound. It was no question in the first place. It was, which is not there in the information you're given. It's a joke. It's nothing to do with information. Today, God willing, I'm going to the Knesset Shluchim. And last year, when I attended this conference of the Chabad rabbis around the world, I took a flight, and when you're going towards this kind of event, you feel like you're a shliach, you're an emissary of God, you have a mission to do, and so on the plane, you're supposed to do that mission as well, right? So I saw this gentleman going on the plane. Hi, sir, are you Jewish? None of your business. All right. Okay, so I thought this was like a parable. Like this is here I am with my tefillin, and this is here's the guy who's put on tefillin with me, and it's all very symmetrical. And here it is. You go into this box, and we'll wrap you up, and but it will move from parable to riddle. Okay, so how do I approach this? Some people are very presumptuous and they say all kinds of things about, and I don't find that very tasteful, because the guy doesn't want to tell. He's insulted by the question. So what do? You're playing a trick with him. You say something else. Like, what am I going to say? So I didn't know the answer to this question, but it was just a riddle. And then we sat down. I sat down. He sat down next to me. This is what we spend the next 5 hours with. So it moved from being just an interesting riddle to a to a joke.
So was it Jewish?
So my response to him was, he said that's fine, but that's a very Jewish response. So anyways, I'm sitting there next to him, and I'm thinking, like, what in the world am I supposed to be doing over here? Like, we're on the flight for 5 hours. There's nothing else I could say that is talking about something else. Like, what am I supposed to be doing here? So it became not anymore a riddle, it became a joke. What I mean by a joke is that there's nothing in the reality that I'm in that makes any sense, and I always see as like, this is purposeless. I'm in a purposeless situation. There's no purpose. As I'm thinking this, I remember a story that I heard right before about Mrs. Lifshitz from Thailand. She was in Balfour in Israel, and there was a protest against Bibi. And she's a religious woman. She's dressed like a frum lady. So the protesters against Bibi switched from Bibi to her, and they started screaming at her, and they said, "You brought us Bibi. Now you brought us Bibi, you brought us Corona, and it's all your fault." And they started screaming at her. Imagine like, you're one person, there's 100 people more screaming at you. Imagine. But she wasn't made from the same kind of stuff that most people are, and she. And she said to herself, "Listen, the Rebbe is the emissary, is the one who sends us on to be an emissary wherever I am, and the mission is to reach out to Jews with love, and that's what I need to do." That's what she said. It reminded me, and besides the story which I'm about to share, I also heard another thing about last week's Torah portion about Hagar. Hagar's lost in the wilderness, and it says in Rashi, she returned to idols of her parents, and. Huh?
She got lost.
Right. Right. It says in the Torah she got lost in the wilderness, and Rashi says, "What does mean she got lost? She went after the idols of her ancestors, her parents." So the question is, how does Rashi know that she went after idolatry, just as she got lost in the desert? So one interpretation is the very fact that you feel that you are lost in the desert, and your situation is purposeless. That itself is idolatry. That itself means that you're in a zone that's not godly. So she looks at this woman who was screaming at her, and she said, and she's, as soon as she says to herself, "I'm an emissary of the Rebbe, and it's a purpose why I'm here." As soon as she says that, she notices that this lady has a keychain that was made in Bangkok, and where she's from. She says, "Oh, that's a beautiful keychain. Should I get you another one when I go back home?" And the lady's looking at her, and she says, "You're from Bangkok?" She says, "Yes." She says, "You're from Chabad?" She says, "Yes." She gets up and she literally embraces her and she starts to cry. She says, Mr. Lifshitz is like, "Why is that important? What are you talking about?" She said that her son went hiking in the mountains over there, and he got badly hurt. And your husband Chesky Lifshitz, Rabbi Chesky Lifshitz, he hired a helicopter to rescue my son, but my son's ribs were broken and he couldn't eat regular foods. And you made soup for my son every single day. So Mrs. Lifshitz said, "Look how small our perspective is. A moment ago, I was for Bibi and for Corona. Now we discover we really are one family. We're all one." So, and this is the story I'm thinking about. And so I'm thinking, okay, I have to say the same thing. There must be a purpose here. And honestly, it was like, just like Hagar found the water in the wilderness that was right there. So also I felt like this epiphany. What I noticed that there's a guy on my left, he's like literally dancing on his keyboard. He's jumping around like this, it's like playing music on his keyboard. He goes from website to website. The guy on my right, the Jewish guy, he's typing. He's very methodical and thinking. He's erasing. He's typing another word and erasing. I look at him. I say, "Are you an author?" he says, how'd you know that? So I said, what kind of writing do you do? So he says he made a biography about some of the Beatles and Rolling Stones, and apparently he's a New York Times best-selling author, and several times he's a prominent author, and so okay, the divine inspiration is at work. I got something. Okay, so have you ever? He said, and I wrote also a biography about Reagan. Reagan, interesting. Are you a Republican? I never voted Republican in my life. All right, so now we're getting a little personal over here. So, did you ever have a bar mitzvah? I told you not to ask me these kinds of questions. So, man, that's the only thing I said to him about Jewish. It was like 2 hours later. This guy's very, he knows exactly what he's saying. He said, don't ask me that question. It's like, okay. But then he said, every Friday they come. They ask me if I'm Jewish. They stand outside my office building and they ask me if I'm Jewish. And I'm offended by the question. So I said to him, listen, I do a podcast. It's called Minute of Torah. I have this thing that I could tell you an idea in less than 2 minutes. Can I share with you something? Can you give me 2 minutes? Can you humor me with 2 minutes? He says, okay. So I told him the story with Mrs. Lipschitz. And I said, I want to tell you where those boys come from, where they're going, and what they're doing right now. So I explained that where those boys come from is where my family comes from. Their parents, their grandparents, they did hard time in Russia to teach children Torah. That's where they come from. They sacrificed their lives in order that people should be able to learn Aleph Beis. Where they're going is they're going to grow up to be like Mrs. Lipschitz and Rabbi Lipschitz to help Jews around the world, physically and spiritually. And what they're doing right now, when you see them outside your office on Friday afternoon, is what they feel is an act of pure kindness. They offer you something that you didn't have before, that they think that you deserve and you don't have access to, and they're offering it to you. That was a good answer. that was the moment. So my point is that it was in the state of riddle, and was in the state of riddle. What happened was state of riddle. I don't know. I said to myself, I stopped looking at the scenario. I started looking at the one who sent me. I started looking at that. I started, I'm not letting go of Hashem. I'm here. There's a reason. Instead, the riddle forced me to stop thinking anymore about the circumstances I was in. I have a parents' film. This guy is Jewish. No, I started thinking more about the one who sent me, and there must be a purpose in Hashem. I'll bore you with one more example. I took one of my sons to, I think it could be last year also at the same time. I'm trying to remember. He was also in New York, and he needed to take a flight back. And I was driving him to the airport in New York, JFK, and we were running late for the flight, but not too late. We were going to make it. So I parked outside of JFK, and I ran in with him. He was an unaccompanied minor, and my son was very nervous. That Tati isn't so good at getting on time for flights, and so okay. Listen, if he misses this, like on next flight, right? Isn't it? That's enough. That's in my mind. Yeah. Then we get to the counter, and the lady says, "Listen, he's an unaccompanied minor, and so it takes time for this to cost $100. Besides that, we need to process. So you have to have someone to walk with him to the gate. I don't have anybody to walk him to the gate right now, and the flight's leaving. This can't work." Okay, so my mind is all right. So, all right, next flight. But he immediately burst out crying. He burst out crying. So then I went to, this can't be. It can't be that in Hashem's plan this is happening. It can't be. This is not Hashem's plan. He's for sure going to make it on the flight. I said that he's for sure going to make it on the flight. And when I said that, it's the only time ever that I know of, I had a ticket that I wasn't going to go. I was able to go on this flight, and it was, in order to change the flight, it cost too much to change the flight, so it ended up being like an empty flight. I had a ticket on the same flight, but I wasn't going to go on it. And I remembered, I have a ticket on this flight. I could take him up to the gate. I have a ticket. So I got a ticket. And meanwhile, my car's outside JFK, right? And I'm going through security and Baruch Hashem, he made it on the flight. Baruch Hashem. Are you going on the flight, sir? No, he's going. He's an unaccompanied minor. Oh, okay, they let him through. But I'm saying the point was, it went from riddle to joke. But then when it went to joke, which again, I don't mean that. I don't want you to get lost by this analogy of joke. Don't get it. I'm not saying Hashem plays jokes on us, chassidus. A lot of speakers say that the Eibush has a sense of humor. That's callous. The Eibush is a loving, kind father. He doesn't play jokes on us. What I mean by the idea of a joke is that it's not in the circumstances that you're in that you're missing something. Is that you have to move away from the circumstances. When there's a riddle, right? You got to juggle and figure out the facts and logic and go back and forth. There's something in the circumstance to figure out. A joke is something else. A joke has nothing to do with what the specific words that you're told. A joke is about the one who's telling you the joke, that he has something else in mind that's not in the circumstance, that is not in the facts that he's telling you. There's nothing. When the person asks you a question as a joke, there's not in what they're telling you is meaningless. There's something else completely. There's nothing to do with what they're saying. They have something completely else different in mind. It has nothing to do with what they're saying. Who is buried in Grant's tomb? Right? It's a question joke. It's nothing about. It's not a question. Grant is buried in Grant's tomb, right? It's not a question. But the idea of a joke is that the person's asking a question has nothing to do with what they're asking. It has to do with they have something else in mind that's not in the information they're giving. And so too, when a person is going through a challenge, a test, you can't overcome the challenge by going deeper into the circumstances that you're in to try to find the rule of divine providence in those circumstances. If you're going through a test, which means, I guess we learned yesterday, a test means that all you see is darkness. You don't see any way out, and you are now, your emotions are changing. You're getting frightened. You're getting angry. You're feeling frustration. You are moved away from the world, the realm of the intellect. You are now in the realm of darkness. When you're in that realm, looking deeper into the circumstances isn't going to help you. Instead, the only thing that's one in the maamer is you need to summon in yourself the strength that comes from your core, that you're not letting go of the Eibishter, not letting go of him. You're devoted to Hashem. It's about you. I'm not letting go of you, Hashem. Just like an analogy of the joke. It's not about the information, it's about the one telling you the joke. They have something else in mind. So too, when you're going through a circumstance that Hashem is giving you a test, you have to say, I'm not letting go of you, Hashem. No matter what, I'm not letting go. I'm not letting go of you, Hashem. That movement to from the circumstance to Hashem is because of the darkness. Because of the darkness, you can't see anything else. So all you do is you go straight to your neshama, and you say, I'm not letting go. Well, that's the idea. But let's look in the Oisius and the words in the maamer, and let's see what we're talking about. You've given those who fear you a test to be tested by, because for the sake of your truth. Rashi explains wordless noises to be custom and test. Hashem wants us to test. He wants us to. Noises is more about us. So we need to be. But Hashem's desire that we overcome tests. Huh?
How would you make this word?
I guess the word nisayin comes to a nun samach.
He's to be tested.
To be menusim. Rashi uses the word menusim.
So his noises.
To be these menusim, to be accustomed in these things. But Rashi also says something interesting. Koshet also says something interesting. Koshet means truth, but koshet also means beauty. Koshet also means a jewelry. Rashi says over there that the nations, the world, say to Hashem, why in the world do you call the Jews the chosen people? When a Jew is challenged, and the Jew overcomes a challenge, then it makes Hashem's name in the world beautiful, because people could see why Hashem chose us. They could see that there's something beautiful about us. And the Cashapp Zelle, Hashem gives us the challenges in order to bring out the beauty of the Jewish people and His beauty in creation of why Hashem made the world this way. That's one interpretation. That's not the interpretation that we're going to focus on. Here's the interpretation we're focusing on. Well, maybe the previous Rebbe says in the maamer that he, based on these words, that he sent to Russia to be studied in Russia. In other words, help the Jews in Russia overcome their challenges. He brings in this maamer and explains his verse according to the Targum. What does the Targum say? You've given those who fear you a challenge to be elevated by. The purpose of the challenge is to lift you up to a different place. The previous Rebbe explains this verse is talking about the Mesiras Nefesh, the absolute dedication that is needed to overcome challenges specifically. The purpose of these challenges are to give the Jewish people a boost, to lift them to be in a higher place. Why is a person given a challenge? It's to lift them, bring them to a higher place than they were before. And this is something which is unique in our time, that Hashem specifically sends us something which is called challenges. And that is the role of our generation. And this is what sets apart this exile from the ones before. That this exile has tremendous tests and challenges. There is so much concealments of godliness that we experience in this exile. The fact that you see that this is what Hashem is doing, that itself tells you that Hashem is giving us the power that we could overcome the challenge. The fact that Hashem is giving us so many challenges, that is an indication that we have the power and strength to overcome the challenge. Because Hashem doesn't play tricks with His creations. So if He's giving us these challenges, it means that we have the ability to overcome the challenges. The Golos Mitzrayim Ksiv V'Yishom Gem Ketzach Meid Kashapp. And they say it's not the B'Lei Samchu. Hashenken is because Ad Lekach V'Eiz Lahakar Sa'emes Kimin Sense B'Vad. The advantage we have in this exile, in comparison to the first exile, is as follows. In the first exile, the exile of Egypt, which is the source of all other exiles, when God told them they were going to be redeemed from Egypt, Moshe Levin told them the words of God, you guys are going to leave this place. It says they did not listen to Moshe Levin, they didn't listen to him, because of shortness of breath and hard work. They were so encumbered by their circumstances, they could not believe they would ever leave Egypt. So the challenges that they had were not overcame. They lost. They did not pass their tests. However, this exile, Hashem gives us the power and the strength to recognize the truth that what we're experiencing is only a test. It's not about what's going on. It's about you. Hashem wants to bring you to a different place. It's not about the circumstance itself. It's about you. Hashem wants to bring you to a higher place. Hashem gave us the ability to do this. So I want to point out that seemingly the logic over here about our exile, that it must be that we have the ability to overcome these challenges because Hashem gave them to us. What about Egypt? In Egypt Hashem gave them challenges they couldn't overcome? Is it possible that Hashem gives a person a challenge that they cannot defeat? If Hashem gives you a challenge, it must be you can overcome it. But there is a very short but very powerful talk that Rebbe gave on the 13th of Iyar, I think in 5712, on the Yartzeit of Rebbe's brother. And in short, Rebbe explains that people look at history in the wrong way. People think that there are some generations in history that did their role, and some generations which didn't, like Adam and Eve. God took Mati from the tree and they ate from the tree. So the world would descend that generation. And other generations, they had their challenges and they overcame their challenges. And each generation has, it goes up, it goes down, and we go further towards the goal of creation, go away from the goal of creation. That's what it seems like. But the Rebbe explains that it's not true. There is no such thing as a generation or a scenario which does not lead towards the coming of Mashiach. Hashem created the world is constantly in a state of elevation. God is the one who made this world, and the world is about going towards the coming of Mashiach, and every situation is all towards that goal. Like Rebbe once said to a group of visitors who were by the Rebbe, and they were going home, and the Rebbe said that it seems like we're all going to different places. The truth is, we're all going to the same place. Because wherever a Jew goes, any time in history, where they're really going, they're going towards the Bais Hamikdash. They're going towards the Kodesh HaKodashim. It's all towards Mashiach. You may be going to Nova Scotia, you may be going to Alaska, but it's about Hashem's mission, about the Lechacha, about the purpose of Hashem sending Jewish people in this world, which is to bring Mashiach. So, but the different ways this elevation can happen. One way this elevation can happen is through a clear, positive, good step. Another way is through going down, and through going down to go to a higher place. The fact that Jewish people did not overcome their challenge then So we know that this wasn't their role, that what their role was to descend for the purpose of an ascent later. As they descended into Egypt and to elevate all the sparks in Egypt for 210 years, that was their role. Adam and Eve, they ate from the tree, and the world descended. And the purpose of the descent was that people should have identity, and they should serve Hashem with their own identity as opposed to before the sin, whatever. But the point is that there was something that went down for the purpose of going up. You read Tzarech Chalila, a descent for the purpose of an ascent. However, in our generation, we are given the ability and the power to recognize the truth that the tests we experience are just that, tests. It's not about what's going on. It's not about the circumstances. It's about Hashem wanting to lift up to a higher place. The previous step goes on to explain that in a challenge, the godly spark that animates a challenge is completely hidden. Unlike in other circumstances, where there's a godly spark that animates every circumstance. Anything in the world has a godly spark in it. But in a regular scenario, you can, if you want to, find the good in the scenario. If you're looking in the scenario, in the circumstance, you could find the divine purpose in that thing. Because there is a divine thing there that you have to find. But a challenge means, what is a challenge? A challenge is, there are two people experiencing exactly the same circumstance. One of them is not being challenged, the other is. Because the challenge isn't about the actual circumstance. The challenge is in you that you feel this is impossible. That's where the challenge takes place. It takes place in yourself. The challenge isn't in the circumstance. The challenge is in you. And the reason why everything is so dark is because the godly spark, which is animating your experience of what's going on, not their experience, but two people went through the same thing. This godly energy is completely submerged, so completely hidden, and you cannot see anything there. Of course, we don't see godly sparks, right? We're human beings. We don't. Our five senses don't see godly sparks. But because a godly spark is more hidden, it's Hashem's hiding it better, so to speak. Because of that, our experience is total darkness, as opposed to a regular scenario when you're not being challenged. The godly spark isn't as hidden. So in your experience, I understand what this is about. I don't understand, but it's a riddle. Let me figure it out. When there's a challenge, what that means is the godly energy is completely hidden totally. And there's nothing you could see that's good about the situation. And the only way to overcome this challenge is to arouse in yourself the power of your core, the bittul of your core, the devotion to Hashem of your core. And that's the meaning, that's the whole purpose of why Hashem gave you the test. And that's the reason why tests elevate us. Because the test forces you to go to a higher place. It forces you to work within yourself and to arouse within yourself the power of your core. I'm not letting go. The language of the previous Rebbe, Mesiras Nefesh, means it has to be this way, it can't be any other way. That's the meaning of Mesiras Nefesh. So what forced you to discover that part of yourself? It was a challenge. It was a total darkness that you're in, that forced you to say, I'm not letting go. And when that happens, when you do that, the Rebbe says, the challenge disappears, as if it never existed. The purpose of the challenge is for you to discover within yourself the power of your core, the devotion to Hashem you have in your very core. In the language, again, Friedrich Rebbe, it has to be this way, it can't be any other way. And automatically, when you do that, the test it wasn't a test in the first place. It was like the joke. There was no question in the first place. There wasn't anything there. It was just in you. When you arouse that power of your core, the test disappears as if it never was. Right. Stop here. God willing, tomorrow I'll be on Zoom. I'm not going to be in person tomorrow. I'll be in New York. If anyone wants to send a message to Oil, I'll be happy to bring it.
Get answers back.